What is the biological cause of water retention plateaus during extended weight loss? Hey guys. I already know about glycogen reserves causing 5 fluctuations of water weight when switching from an anabolic surplus to catabolic deficit. But what about this common experience? You're tracking calories to a 500 deficit, and you steadily lose 1 pound week. But then your weight loss stalls. For 15 days, your weight hovers around the same number, going up half a pound, down half a pound, no progress. You wonder, do I need to adjust my intake again? On the 16th day, you lose 3 pounds. What is going on in your body that causes this? Would taking a diet break and eating at maintenance cause your body to drop the extra water weight? Usually does for me, which is why I subscribe to the stress cortisol hypothesis. Sometimes one hearty meal and a good night's sleep will do it. Cool. Thanks. Gonna try a break next week and see what happens. Been plateauing for about 2-3 weeks now. I think your water weight fluctuates the same amount when you are maintaining weight versus losing weight. It just looks like a plateau when you're losing weight, since your actual weight is decreasing while your water weight is increasing. For example, to illustrate this, if you draw a zigzag line on a downward slope, it's going to look like a series of plateaus and drops. Whereas if you draw a zigzag line on a flat line, it's going to look like a series of ups and downs. But in both cases the actual fluctuations are the same. I believe cortisol is a big factor in water retention. The longer the diet, the more stress that accumulates. The more cortisol can rise and cause temporary water retention. There are obviously other factors at play, such as sodium, the amount of carbs in your diet, monthly cycle for women. But cortisol is the one that I understand to be the biggest outside of those variables. Carbs won't ever cause water retention. Water retention is a metabolic issue, usually to do with fasting, not eating enough and or being sedentary. I eat a very high carb diet and have zero water retention. Well, I'm really talking about muscle glycogen rather than just water. If we want to get technical, by eating a high carb diet, you will have more muscle glycogen that is binded with water. If you were to all of a sudden eat a diet low in carbs, but balance that with higher fat and protein so that you were eating the same calories, you would lose a few pounds from glycogen water alone. Even though you aren't in a calorie deficit, which would just come back if you switched back to high carb. I don't want to sound like a dick, but it might be worth reading up on carbs and their effect on water retention, as it's pretty common knowledge. No, I don't need to read, as I've gone to school for this and eat a very high carb diet. Well, I'm really talking about muscle glycogen rather than just water. If we want to get technical, by eating a high carb diet, you will have more muscle glycogen that is binded with water. True, but most people don't refer to that as water retention. And who complains about full muscles? Water retention is usually associated with bloat and edema and puffiness, which obviously has nothing to do with full skeletal muscles of glycogen and water. So anyway, I don't want to sound like a dick, but it might be worth considering that it's obviously the dieting causing water retention. No, in the context of this post we are talking about the scale not moving, even though you're in a calorie deficit, because of the counterbalance of excess water in the body. No one is talking about puffiness or edema in this post. My point was that weight loss on a diet may stall temporarily if the amount of carbs significantly increase. I wasn't suggesting carbs cause edema. Renaissance periodization is of the opinion that it's related to stress hormones, that is increased cortisol water retention, and dieting for long periods of time is a great way to increase stress. Dr. Mike also mentioned that it's due to the salt hydration cycle, where when you are on a cut you like saltier foods cause they taste better, then you drink more water to hydrate. But that makes you eat salt to replenish lost salt during increased urination, and so on. Today I learned one day you dump all that water out. When you're using fat as a fuel source, your body creates ketone bodies which help your body retain water. It takes time to get rid of those completely, since you keep producing them by being at a caloric deficit. Eventually your body requires less energy and produces less ketone bodies, allowing your kidneys to fully clear them, along with the water they hold. It's more technical than that. In order to be 100% physiologically accurate, but it's a decent layman's answer. Is this true? I've never heard the claim that ketone bodies attach to water molecules. I believe the mechanism for water retention during ketosis is from something other than serum ketone bodies. They have huge dipoles in their oxygen groups and are osmotically active. It's part of the reason why there's an osmolar gap in diabetic ketoacidosis. An osmolar gap is a difference between the measured osmolarity of serum and the calculated osmolarity based on the basic metabolic panel. The presence of a gap indicates there's an unaccounted molecule increasing the osmolarity. In the case of DKA, ketosids. That makes sense, I think. I'm not the farthest into my chemical degree, so forgive me freshman, lol. So water is attached. Why does this cause water retention? I had read people usually lose water weight. Is that just water loss from the muscles that just moved to the ketone bodies? You eventually urinate it all and lose like 5 pounds overnight. But it has to get to a threshold point where your kidney processes it. Look up the wash effect as it's one explanation. Though I'm not so sure. I just think it's natural fluctuations based on your hydration and salt levels, which hold water and a whole bunch of other things as mundane as how much poop you have in your body. Remember, your weight is only a measurement of how much all the things in your body weigh, and not at all directly tied to how much fat you have in your body. It is only through the gradual losing of fat that you eventually see it reflected in the scale over time. You're deducing that you have less fat by comparing your less weight after efforts to lose fat. The scale and your body don't give a duck about what you're trying to do and doing their own thing. That is why daily weight is a poor measurement. Weekly mean weight is quite good. If you measure your weight daily first thing in the morning after your morning pee, you get sort of a baseline of not having eaten different things, yet in different amount of water after the fasting through the night, and also removed the pee from your bladder. And the weekly mean makes the small fluctuations that are left even out somewhat. Also, people tend to forget about poop. Your weight is never linear. If you see visible water retention, the first reason that comes to mind is stress. Your body does not want to be in a catabolic state, and if you're dipping too far below your maintenance, you're going to put it under physiological stress. When it comes to appearance, I always tell people fat and flat look the same. You lose detail when you're holding water, but also when the muscle isn't filled out with glycogen to push it up against the skin. When you lose fat, the cells refill with water. If you continue to lose, these cells will eventually release the water and you'll get a wash. I can tell when I'm close to one because my fat feels very squishy. Now that I know that, it motivates me to continue to lose, even thought the scale won't show it, so I can pop those water balloons. Then you rinse, repeat the process for the next group of cells that are still filled with fat. Some of it has to do with the amount of carbs you consume. Blood plasma is about 1 gram per liter of plasma. When you eat 50 grams of carbs, you have to 1 break down complex carbs, then 2 dissolve them in your guts, 3 get them into your blood to use them, or 4 turn them into fat glycogen. All these steps require a bit of water. Also, basically, your extra tissue is a reservoir for water in your diet, and your body is expecting so many calories to maintain weight. It gets used to your carb intake. As your amount of tissue decreases, your body adjusts to needing less water, less tissue to maintain, fewer calories needed to maintain weight, and it lets go as you get smaller. Hormones are definitely involved, as are intestinal flora. It's like how people say it's that extra piece of pizza or extra pasta that makes them gain like 5 pounds. Maybe you're eating lots of carbs. For every carbohydrate molecule you store 2 water molecules as well. It's not as much plateaus as it is varying water weight. If your water weight goes up by the same amount as your actual body mass goes down, the sum will be 0 and the line will be flat. So it's like your water weight fluctuates during maintenance, only it's on a downward slope. People also forget about poop weight. Food can travel through your body quicker or slower. If there happen to be more stuff in your intestines at the same time as you retain slightly more water, the weight will look even higher. Or if you at the same time as you retain less water and also have little stuff in your gutty works, your weight will look lower. So within the same day even you can easily fluctuate a couple kilogram. If I weight myself in the morning after my morning pee, dehydrated after the night, and on an empty stomach, and then again at nightfall, and highly hydrated, and especially if I didn't poop THST day, I can have gained more than 2 kg from morning to night. Also, stress cortisol especially have an effect on water weight. Now during my last deload I'm in a cut at the moment. I increased calories from 750 deficit to maintenance. Dropped my volume, load and reps by 50%. Halfway through that week I suddenly lost 1.5 kg. So I lost a lot of stress from both exercise and from calorie deficit. So even considering more calories, more food in my GI tract and full muscle glycogen stores, I still lost so much water weight that it more than made up for that. I've never seen an adequate physiological explanation for this that is backed by evidence. So as far as I'm concerned, my wild conjecture is as valid as anything. If we know anything about the human body, it is that it tries to maintain homeostasis where possible. The body knows when it is losing weight, so initially increase general water retention to compensate. Eventually, if you continue the diet for long enough, the body will give and flush out the retained water to establish a new baseline. It also makes sense that if you if you can't find enough food, water might be an issue in the near future. So holding on to a little more water when you're at a caloric deficit is a logical move by the body. My guess has always been starvation mode. I figured it's on a spectrum. The more aggressive the deficit, the more pronounced the sudden retention before the wash, as some people call it. I've done a few cuts from 300 pounds to 210 pounds, and each time I experienced this after every 10 pounds of loss after the initial 10 pounds fall off, which KS usually comprised of water and glycogen, so not really fat loss. This is why you shouldn't judge your progress by a scale alone. You can weigh yourself every day for months. You can consider the average weight of the past month or week or so to be your approximate weight. You can also measure your waistline in the same way. I've had times where the scales haven't budged for 3 weeks, but my waistline has had its most dramatic change during that time. And times when my weight steadily drops by 1-2 pounds per week for over a month, but my waistline doesn't budge. Tracking your progress is good, and it's cool to see numbers constantly going down. But that just doesn't always happen. Even if you eat at maintenance, your body weight fluctuates naturally as it goes through different cycles and stages. Metabolism is super complex, so I'm not sure your question can be answered. Here is what is really going on. You are eating extra salty foods and diet beverages to compensate because you are in a calorie deficit. So by doing that, your body is holding some extra water. I wouldn't worry too much about it though. I easily dropped 10 pounds overnight, sleeping 8 hours. Readjust calories. As you lose weight, you'll have to adjust that. Also, some could be due to inflammation. There's a lot of possibilities though. If you enjoyed this video and want more fitness related content, click subscribe and hit the notification bell.